Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, November 14th. I'm Robert Blaskowitz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Join with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times Assistant Managing Editor Krista Zivanovic. Let's jump right in talking about kind of the big education news going on. We had reported in today's newspaper on the contentious meeting of the Indiana State Board of Education yesterday, where they actually did get something done. They kind of approved a framework for revising the current school evaluation A through F grading system into something else. And then the meeting kind of fell apart once the board attempted to make a move to have the governor's new agency, the Center for Education and Career Innovation, for them to take over oversight of the Common Core implementation. Glenda Ritz kind of tried to basically called the meeting to a halt after that and kind of walked out on things. What do you make of what happened yesterday and where it goes from here?
Well, to me, this is what it comes down to is, Governor Pence is trying to take over education. He's trying to, link it more closely with careers, and workforce preparation rather than, citizenship preparation or some of the, more lofty historic goals. But basically, he wants, he knows he's getting the blame for it, and he wants to be able to control, this linkage. But Glenda Ritz was elected as superintendent of public instruction. That's been her project all along, and frankly, she got more votes than Mike Pence did. So, in the fall election, so there's a lot to be said for having her run this program too.
Right. And when the governor created this Center for Education and Career Innovation, it was kind of I interpreted it as kind of a more kind of post-secondary oriented workplace training, vocational kind of things, and yet now the State Board of Education is trying to hand over Common Core oversight to this agency.
I think this agency, the Center for Education and Career Innovation, was also intended to dip into secondary education at the high school level, because they want to make sure. We keep hearing that there are all these jobs, but there are no people qualified for them. Partly it's because everyone's on a college track, and I think what the governor's trying to do is get more people into job training kinds of courses. The problem with having that agency, however, oversee how we're going to educate really is problematic, because I don't know how many of those people are educators. I think that it still should be, whether we go with Common Core, whether we scrap Common Core and choose something else or do a hybrid, it really should be up to educators to do. There's nothing to say that educators can't work with this agency in saying, you know what, you're right, we should be steering, instead of a sliver, we should be steering 20%, 30% to college, maybe for 2 years, but with a training program that is more hands-on. So that was my problem with it, that whatever we choose, it should not be this group, it should be the Department of Education. And I think the governor's playing politics. I think this is purely, if it had been Tony Bennett who won and was now superintendent, there would not be any of this.
Well, and let's face it, with Common Core, for example, who's really pushing it? It's the Tea Party initiative. Common Core is
to get rid of Common Core.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, Common Core is basically implemented already in Indiana. I mean, it's schools are substantially,
and 46 other states.
Exactly, and
it is one of those rare. Yes, 44. But well, actually, 2 have partially implemented, Minnesota and another state. But I think it's also sad because it's one of those rare things that had bipartisan support, both Democrats and Republicans. It was Tony Bennett, Republican, and Republican Governor Mitch Daniels who implemented it and said, this is a good thing. We want to be globally competitive. We want our state universities to know whether you apply from an Indiana school or a school from Alaska, that you are competent in these certain core substantive competencies.
And what Common Core is it tries to give you a deeper understanding of a subject rather than simply passing a test.
Right.
You have to prove that you really know
Right.
and have mastered
Rather than just
that subject.
rote memorization, you can think critically and write critically
Exactly, and this is what
and
we're trying to
manipulate
get.
two sides of an issue, right?
Exactly, and this is what we're trying to get out of our students, to make them critical thinkers in the workplace. We don't want them to just know how to pull a lever. We want them to know when is the appropriate time to decide that lever shouldn't be pulled.
Right.
All of these
On
things.
the other side of the coin, and what you got at with the Tea Party and certain people's opposition to Common Core is they are federal standards, and so it is.
Well, sort of, but sort of not. I mean, these are standards. They're federal, but not handed down by the
Right.
federal government. This is each of the states going together on that. That's why it's not all 50 states.
Right.
So it's it's a grassroots initiative that is caught on.
Yeah, and also some of there has been a lot of criticism of basically the standards themselves being inappropriate, age inappropriate, particularly at the elementary school level. We're seeing, and I have an elementary age son, and he has a lot of homework, and the teachers have a lot of requirements on them, and there is arguments that it's you bombard teachers with all this paperwork, these requirements, and you take the joy out of education. So there's a danger there as well with Common Core. And I think we have to balance, if we're going to implement this. It has to be balanced in order to you want to keep educational lively and not just this constant bombardment of testing and standards and.
Well, I mean, there are different ways to get at
Right.
that mastery.
Right. But I think that what was behind the Common Core and all of that was that the United States as a nation, scores so low, not just among industrialized countries, but among some second and third world countries in math and science as well as other subjects. And I think that was the idea that maybe we do need to reintroduce some rigor. And I completely understand and get what you're saying, but let's introduce a little more rigor, because what we're competing with globally are countries that have rigorous education standards and programs.
But the bottom line is, I think that it should be not this new center
I agree.
implementing
It should be
Common Core.
educators.
It should be educators. And Glenda Ritz herself is a master teacher. She has the background
Right.
to know this, the best way to implement this. So
Right.
so for I think
And I just want not to beat a dead horse, but Common Core was vetted by the state legislature and by school districts across Indiana, including in Northwest Indiana, and teachers have embraced it. And so it's not like they just threw it out there and it's some
Right.
crazy, wacky thing that we haven't even looked at or planned for.
Right, and meanwhile you have school districts that are adopting textbooks and they're based on Common Core. To toss the whole thing out would then really create chaos for our school
that's my
districts.
concern about when I say it is politics being interjected into an arena where it's really unfortunate, because it's just, I think that the governor and some others are angry because Glenda Ritz had a lot of union support, both by the teachers union and other unions in the state, and so they want to destroy her because they're angry about that.
Speaking of politics being interjected into education, we saw today an ethics complaint against Tony Bennett, the former, the Republican school superintendent, who was ousted by Glenda Ritz last year, went down to Florida to become the education chief down there, and then the whole thing blew up because the story came out about the emails and the manipulating of the A through F grading system to benefit certain schools, including a charter school operator that donated to his campaign. And now today's complaint, and it looks like it'll be going forward, and there'll be probably hearings on this, is that Bennett used office equipment, computers,
Personnel, time,
for politics,
time.
and this is
To
exactly
campaign.
right, which is exactly what Lake County Surveyor George Van Til was indicted for. It's the same kind of thing.
And what everybody does, but
Right.
these were the two individuals who were now standing, being accused of this. And what's interesting in this case is the Inspector General is filing a report, and this is, a Republican government all the way, other than Glenda Ritz, and so it's interesting to see the Inspector General going forward with this. You think politically they watch their own. Well, not so in this case.
Well, we'll see what comes of it, if he actually, I know our story says he could eventually face criminal and civil penalties if the accusation is sustained. So that's where the rub will lie, if they really do a thorough investigation and vetting. And, yeah.
And, what this brings up is there's been a lot of complaints about the way he ran the office. You got to admit he was brash. Even the supporters didn't know that he was that. But frankly, he did a lot of good reforms, I think.
I agree.
And
I don't think anyone can argue that.
And now those reforms, as in the ADF grading system, are under attack. The ADF, I think they had to approve it during this board meeting yesterday because they had a statutory deadline of November 15th,
right.
But I don't think you've heard the last of that.
Well, let's let readers know, too, that the reason they did that was because the state legislature said, these are complicated. Schools don't really have a chance to show how they can improve with this, so let's revise the A to F. So this was mandated by the state legislature, and they did give a date of November 15th. But you're right, I don't think we've heard the last of it.
So it'll be a real battle to watch for months to come.
Well, nationally, real battle has for months and months to come has been the battle over the Affordable Care Act, and the rollout has not gone. It's an understatement. It's gone horribly for the administration. And just today, President Obama made the announcement in light of the recent, just torrent of criticism over his earlier statements that if you like your plan, you can keep it, and then people getting cancellation notices that he would allow insurers to basically extend and sell those plans that would have been previously canceled under Obamacare, and they would have been canceled because basically they were substandard insurance plans that offered very few benefits.
Or not the same benefits that now are offered, like your kid can stay on your insurance till he or she's 26, no pre-existing condition penalties, things like that. Those are the kinds of plans that were rendered illegal.
And, one of the things that Obamacare brought in was that, for example, you had to prove that, X% of the premium went to actual services rendered and not to overhead. You recall companies having to pay back money because of this. Exactly. And so, these are the things. What this reminds me of is frankly, it reminds me of Mitch Daniels in the Griffith High School auditorium a few years ago when he stood up and was talking about local government reform. But
in Lake County in particular.
Exactly. Singled out Lake County, which has more government than anywhere else in the state. And he said something to the effect of, you're entitled to all the lousy, crummy, no-good, graft-ridden government you can afford. And basically switch insurance policy for government, and it sounds like that's what Obama's saying in this case.
Well, they've dug themselves a giant hole, and they're trying to dig out of it. And time will tell whether they can get the website fixed, which there were assurances that it would be done by the end of November, and now we're starting to hear things. Well, maybe a little bit longer. So, getting that done, and then getting things implemented. This is such a complicated issue, and when you look at yesterday, the word came out about the number of people that had actually been able to sign up for the exchanges, and it was a fairly low number. But what was interesting was seeing how it was radically different from geographic region to geographic region, based in large part on states.
How well the states had prepared.
Exactly. Yes. So states like California and Kentucky, which had set up their own exchanges, have had many, many more people sign up than states like Indiana, where there is no. We're
Indiana,
left with the federal
fought
exchange.
It. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if Indiana fought it so hard, there's very little marketing of it. very little money set aside for marketing of it, and frankly, the numbers from the Department of Insurance were I think cooked to try to make it as bad as possible
yes.
for the those enrolling. So
Yeah.
what do you expect?
Right,
You know?
and it's there's obvious frustration with the president and the administration, but I don't know that there's very much confidence that the Republicans would have any reasonable alternative to the goal of getting more Americans insured.
I don't think so. Todd Rokita's getting more support for his plan that would be, cancel Obamacare and gradually bring it, in some of those provisions. But that's not going to happen.
Right.
So
because that would entail basically kicking people off the insurance rolls.
right.
And then you want to get even worse problem. I mean, the problems of this are bad enough, but you want to get it even worse. You want to say, okay, well now, kids under 26 are kicked off their parents and pre-existing conditions. Sorry, you're out of luck now, and there are. It's a huge, complicated issue.
Well, it is,
There are
and
no
it's
easy
one
answers
that we've been talking about, frankly, since the time Franklin Delano Roosevelt was
Harry
president.
Truman
Yeah.
Exactly.
also tried to get a
you know,
national health care
And it's kind of
in
turned into
place.
this kind of Rube Goldberg kind of contraption, built upon insurance companies, built
Right.
upon employers, and all this, when you look elsewhere in the world, in the industrialized world, where it's a very simple single-payer plan.
But also
that-
where many people in this country have labeled
Right.
it a socialist system. So
Right.
the legislators did try and put together something that would accommodate and incorporate capitalism and states' rights, and that's what
And
you
the
get then
market.
is and the market.
Yeah.
So you get this. I love the Rube Goldberg
Yeah.
metaphor.
Yeah.
Right. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Right, right. But, this is his signature achievement, and I think that, his legacy is going to be all wrapped up in how this is implemented over the next couple of years. And
Yeah,
so,
and whether it's an achievement remains to be seen.
Right.
But,
right.
but it will be how
Yeah.
history judges them, I think.
Yep.
Well, that's all the time we have this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another Political Roundtable.